We know in the West that there is widespread support for the welfare state. I think my panelists will agree with me that that is uh, not a good idea, and we've discussed this on the channel in the past. We'll discuss it in the future. But there's a very interesting welfare state in the Palestinian Authority-controlled territories or the Palestinian territories, which is if you have committed or were involved in a terrorist attack against Israel, if you've murdered Jews you get money from the government. You get money from the government, which probably comes from you, the viewers, tax money. And in one survey of the Palestinians, 91% of Palestinians support that, support the Martyrs Fund, support giving money to people for killing Jews, which of course you would think means that they support the killing of Jews. And the other 9% may still support it, but maybe are not fans of the welfare state and want this done through a private enterprise. Uh, in the main point that I'm trying to make here is one thing that the Palestinian people are united about is killing Jews. So the Palestinian people may not all be Hamas in terms of their organizational affiliation, but they are all Hamas in its essence of its desire to kill all the Jews until the state of Israel is wiped off the map. Welcome to the reality show, day 186 of the war in Israel. Jonathan, I'm going to go to you first. By the way, before I go to you, I will say that there was an interview. Dr. Phil interviewed Musab Hassan Yusuf, the son of Hamas, and we will be watching clips of that and clips of some other people who were on that panel, and we will be discussing that. He is that interview inspired this show, so yeah, we'll get to that in a few minutes. Jonathan, I'm going to go to you first.
Good evening. Yes, as an Israeli, this is, I think, a very well-known fact that if I were to go to one of these Palestinian villages, there's a very good chance that I wouldn't be able to ever live it. I could be taken hostage, I could be raped, or I could be murdered simply. And I think that is something that I have known for as long as I can remember living in this country. And I think it's rather revealing of the type of population that lives there, considering the fact that those same people who live in those villages, a lot of them, they venture into Israel every day for work. They used to, now they don't. And they never get killed, they never get kidnapped, they never get tortured. Why is that? Is there something fundamentally different about our societies? You could say it's war, you could say there are a lot of excuses, but this is an undisputable fact. It is illegal for people, for Israelis to enter the Palestinian authorities in the West Bank. I'm not talking about Gaza, we're talking about the West Bank. It is illegal for my own safety, because even it's not just a thing, it's a dangerous neighborhood in Chicago, you shouldn't go there. The government is prohibiting me, talking about apartheid, prohibiting me to enter. So that is revealing. And when we talk about Gaza, of course, it's way worse because they are literally controlling, because we have so foolishly left Gaza to their control, and they can do whatever they want, and nobody can expect the IDF to come and rescue them, unlike in the West Bank. So yes, from that perspective, it has little to do with political parties or specific factions. Everybody would agree there that they should kill, it's hard for me to say everybody, but it's just very much likely that I'm going to get hurt when I go there. And I think that's very revealing.
Marco.
Yeah, first of all, I don't really agree with the title of this episode. Palestinians are not Hamas. First of all, Palestinians are not, full stop. Palestinians are just Arabs that happen to live around Israel. They're trying to destroy Israel and kill every single Jew on the land. Hamas is only made up of those Arabs who actually live in Gaza. So Gazans are Hamas. The rest are from the West Bank. And although they have the same goal to destroy Israel and kill all the Jews in the land, we call them PA, Palestinian Authority. So the essence is the same. However, if there weren't in Israel around, they would be fighting each other like they did in 2008 when they killed hundreds of people between Hamas and Palestinian Authority at the point where we had two Palestinian states. Again, the issue is not political. It's not about the two-state solution. It's about a single solution, the one wipe out the ideology behind the murderous acts that we've seen in the last few months.
With a nod to what Marco just said, but I am going to focus on the Gazans as Palestinians for my answer. So when talking about the Palestinians are Hamas, let's ask ourselves, what is the difference then? Is the difference ideology? Because I can't see a difference in the ideology. It's based on the same religion. It's based on the same texts. It's based on the same religious leaders and the people who set the culture and set the what people believe. So the ideology is clearly the same for both Palestinians and Hamas. Is it the racism? Because the racism would seem to be the same as well. The racism seems to be anti-Jew, both in text and in action, both for Hamas, whether it's killing Jews, or whether it's teaching people within Gaza to hate Jews in schools and in every family setting. So there doesn't seem to be a difference there. When you could talk about racism in the US, people don't make a distinction between whether you shoot a black person or just shout at a black person or teach your kids anti-black things. It's the same thing. It's racism. So racism isn't the foot of what the difference is. So what is it? Is it the violence itself? Because if you're complicit in facilitating the violence, then you're also committing the violence, aren't you? If you're sending your kids to camps for them to be taught how to be little soldiers, how to fire guns, how to stab sandbags that are labeled as Jews, how is that different from the Hamas that goes across the border and does the same thing for real? Is it the uniform that is the difference? Is it the fact that people wear fatigues when they're shown in Hamas with a green banner across the head? Well, no, not always, because frequently they're dressed as civilians firing RPGs, and clearly the uniform is not relevant. The SS soldier in the Nazis is not the only form of Nazi there is. It's all the support network for him. The bookkeeper in Auschwitz is as guilty of being a Nazi as the commandant. So it's certainly not the uniform, is it? So whichever way you try and separate it, and there are many, many more that we can talk about, there seems to be no fundamental difference. So it's just a dropping of context that wants people to focus on families and kids and children and divorce all the rest of it, all those elements I just spoke about, and pretend they don't exist when they do, and they lead to October 7th.
Yeah, and Marco, I agree with your criticism of the episode's title, even though I wrote it myself, but it's a good point. I want to quickly go to this question by Carla. So she asks, isn't this collectivism, and shouldn't we also pay attention to individuals? So there's different parts to this here. If you meet one-on-one a person who says they're Palestinian, assuming that they are automatically assuming that, because even if we disagree on their definition of Palestinian, assuming that they are, as individuals, hoping for the extermination, that is collectivism. In a time of war, in a country where if you want the state to act within its legitimate boundaries, what you want it to do is to protect its citizens from any outside threat. And that's it. The outside, that does not involve sending soldiers to their own death to protect civilians on the other side. And by the way, it doesn't even matter if it's if there's a complete consensus on the enemy's side, or if it's like Iran, for example, where there's not a consensus. Many people are on our side, and many of those will likely die if we went to war with Iran. That is not the role of a government to try somehow to find who is guilty at a time of war. And if they try to do that, as Israel does try to do, Israel goes beyond that and just decides that every civilian is automatically innocent. What you do is you harm the goals of the military operation, and you ensure that the other side has the motivation to keep fighting even if they lose this current battle. Any quick thoughts on that from anyone before we go to the first clip?
The issue of population, and think about the French population in World War II. Were they sad when the Americans bombed their cities? Were they calling out that this is a violation of international law and they should, or with all that nonsense? No, they were glad. They were actually helping the Americans, the French resistance. They helped them to go, and mark the targets for their bombers. So there is talking about a population that is fundamentally pro freedom against a population who is fundamentally, they're seeing their own destruction with these ideas because they're not fighting, because there are people who fight, and I think we should call them heroic. They should be heroes. Those Palestinians who are helping and collaborating and doing anything they can in order. For example, the guy that we will watch, the son of Hamas, I think is a hero. He's an incredibly courageous human being, and he's Palestinian. So I have nothing against Palestinian per se, but in a war, I have to, fundamentally, the country of Israel needs to protect its citizens. It cannot make these distinctions. Fundamentally, the people of this entity, Gaza, they supported this. They were accomplices. They gave shelter. They led them into their hospitals. They 100%, they were collaborating with anything that Hamas did on October 7th, and they celebrated with their V signs. So I think we need to say about the heroes, we should celebrate them, but the majority, they have black moral stains all over them.
Marco?
Yeah, let's remember that all the flag-waving baboons out there, the PLO flag-waving baboons, who effectively are supporting Hamas because Hamas is the legitimate government of Gaza. Yes, it is. Absolutely. Hamas was voted in as a government in Gaza after Israel gave Gaza to the Arabs. But they voted Hamas, having read its charter, which included the destruction of Israel and the killing of all Jews. Now, you could argue that the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank is slightly a bit more subtle about it, but it's the same aim. So yes, we disagree on the title. There's a few nuances of the title, but in the end, the aim is the same. So call them Palestinian, call them what you want. They still want to destroy Israel. And later on, we can probably go into what the essential is.
And it's not by chance that charter says what it says. It's based on the ideology that supports it, which is the same ideology which leads to the Palestinians holding their views. So they can't be separated out on that basis, on the fact that a piece of paper says this, when it's the same text and what's written in the Quran and what is repeated by the imams and what is repeated by the mothers of the children in their own homes is the same thing. I think when you were talking about resistance, there's resistance on the streets of London when not by the people walking down doing the protests, but by those holding up a sign saying Hamas is terrorist, for example. Those are people who are brave and are showing resistance. And of course, they're the ones that are bundled away by the police. They're the ones that we in the West are suppressing the view of because it's too risky for civil order to have the truth said aloud, which is what makes us complicit in the support of Hamas, and is what makes it very necessary for people like us to speak out on this channel, for example.
Yeah, Irene says in the chat, facts, Jonathan, coming from a Frenchie. And Jesse says, Yasmin Mohammed is another good Palestinian voice for reason. Yeah, Yasmin Mohammed was actually on this channel a few years, I don't remember how many years ago, but 2 or 3 years ago, interviewed by Jonathan Honig on the Daily Objective. So you can check that out after we go off the air. All right, should we go to the clip? Yeah, so you know, I think this guy is kind of proof that the Palestinians have no excuse. You know, it's the fact that you know, he was raised the way he was raised, not just randomly by, you know, some family in Gaza who sent him to an UNRWA school because that was the cheap option, and then he was indoctrinated. Like, he was actually raised by a co-founder of Hamas. And yeah, it's first of all, it's not an easy thing for anybody to leave any aspect of their culture, let alone it's, you know, in every, like, a culture like that especially is a culture where basically if you leave, you are a traitor. And I can only imagine what he might go through. So super inspiring, and it's not just us who should be inspired, but it is people in Gaza, people in Judea and Samaria and the West Bank. If they want to live as decent human beings and as human beings, they should listen to this guy. Jonathan.
I want to give an example to that, even to the envy and the hatred from the 1920s. I want to quote from Milan Journo's book, What Justice Demands. So this is a quote from a villager, an Arab villager during those times. This is way before Israel. So he says, "Money is God in Tel Aviv. Must all Palestine become one day like this, including the holy city of Jerusalem? Tel Aviv is an usurer eating into our own country. If it is what the Jews want to make of Palestine, I wish my children dead. We do not mind poverty, but we weep when our peace is taken away. We lived a modest and contented life, but what shall we do if our children go up to ape the noisy ways of these new people?" And I think it's very similar to what Musab is describing. But this is before Israel. This is about Tel Aviv. This is about them bringing modernity to the pathetic, villages. This is the fundamentality of this culture. And they're the same. And they like that. They like to be impoverished. They like to be in poverty. They like to be pathetic. The people of North Korea, I don't think any of them who manages to get out marches and hates those people who escaped, who say bad things about North Korea. Everybody celebrates that. Everybody hates to live under tyranny. But the Palestinians liked it. They liked the tyranny. They like their, savage kind of lifestyle. And they hate anything that has to do with modernity. And I think it still holds with a lot of them.
That's an amazing quote. And yeah, any rational Palestinian would love to live in a place like Tel Aviv, other than the parking, which was unacceptable. But thank you. Let me quickly thank the super chatters. Thank you, Rob, for becoming a YouTube member. Thank you, Jonathan Honig, who I mentioned was the person interviewing Yasmin Mohammed. Thank you, Ginger. Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Amir. He says, keep it up, guys. You're doing Galt's work. Nice. And oh, Daniel is correcting me that Nikos is the one. Are you sure that Nikos is the one who did the interview with Yasmin Mohammed? All right. I assume. All right. Daniel knows what he's talking about. All right. My apologies for that. Marco.
Yeah, but both Yusuf and Jonathan just mentioned the two entities we were talking about. On one side, Israel, a civilized, westernized, freedom-loving, productive country with its own flaws, because, for example, you have certain religious nuttiness going on, and you have conscription. So, but largely individual rights protecting state, a legitimate state. On the other side, who have we got? You got a state who wants to impose a theocracy. You got a state where people act on behalf of the will of a god. And then if a god tells you go and kill Jews, you go and kill Jews. But what does it say about you? It just says you're just a puppet with no will. However, if that were the main purpose, how do you explain people like Mossab Yousaf? How do you explain all the people who actually left and became civilized, that rejected this kind of culture? So what one of the two sides want to impose is actually just destruction and death. And what the Palestinian supporters are doing here in the West are just enabling them, are just impairing the righteous country from defending itself. And that's what we have to avoid. It's not just a clash, a localized clash in the Middle East. This is literally about civilization versus a theocratic move back to the past, to a slavish past.
And what he's talking about in that clip, he's talking about the racist ideology towards the Jews. And racism and violence is decried in every other place, except when it comes to Palestinians, where it's applauded or excused, it would seem. I think to reference what the person in the chat said earlier about individuals and collectivism, well, collectivism, the lowest form of collectivism, as Rand pointed out, is racism. And that's what you're seeing here. And that's what the envy, the anger, the hatred of this other group that is taught to children is all about. And of course, what I want to make the distinction between what the Palestinians say and do, and what the Western apologists think they say and do, or will claim they say and do, will avoid admitting that they say and do, because that's where the religion of peace trope that's trotted out after every violent attack, every terrorist attack on anyone's shores. That's where that comes from. It comes from the desire not to face the truth of what led to the attack, which will be celebrated in the countries for which provided its source of ideology.
Yeah, and Hannah says in the chat, poverty is a problem, not a virtue. Well, yes, but if, this is not unique to Islam. Mother Teresa was famously very much in favor of kind of keeping people alive, but keeping them poor. When you're not on the side of human life on Earth, things like poverty and the other things that the Palestinians do, you can convince yourself that they are virtuous, or a charismatic enough preacher can convince you of that. And obviously, with the Palestinians, that has worked very well. All right,
Sorry, even that is not even an argument, because what's the difference between Israelis and Palestinians? The Israeli pull a finger out and get on with it. That they are productive. They change the same kind of desert that the people in Gaza are living in, but they turn into Tel Aviv and all the other places which are enviable in the Middle East. Are some of the best places in the Middle East. While in Gaza, what did they do? They took billions from international welfare aid from the UN and whatever, and they just turned them into weapons and tunnels and corruption. And that's why the leaders of Hamas are living it up in Qatar, and they're billionaires. So it's a total difference in culture. Poverty is not something that lives in the air, is diffused in the air. It's personal responsibility. Israelis culture takes responsibility. Every individual does something useful, does something productive. People in Gaza just choose to live on the handouts.
Debbie says in the chat, it's child abuse to indoctrinate at such a young age. I agree with you, and I agree with you. Like, doesn't matter what you're indoctrinating. If somebody's tried to preach objectivism to a 3-year-old, that is also child abuse. Like, you teach a child to think and how to think for themselves, not scare them into thinking whatever it is that you want them to think. And think is a big word to describe what they do in such cultures.
I would also say it's abuse to have this many children without being able to provide for them, and that's a big sin that the Gazans are guilty of.
Yeah, I agree. Next clip.
Unless, as one mother said, they are bred to be martyrs, which is also the goal.
Yeah, Jonathan, but yeah, just apologies for those images, even pixelated. I would have preferred not to show them, but I forgot that they are there. Yeah, Jonathan.
It's just this guy is really admirable. The way he is so clear, and so he really goes to the heart of this. And I think also I should say also about Dr. Phil, I think it's terrific. The fact that he is hosting this program. Generally, was always the voice of reason. Should always listen to Dr. Phil. But yeah, I was listening. There was a very good documentary that also was very revealing of the culture of the Palestinian people. And it was an interview with one of the hostages that were released, who was held in Gaza for what was it, 2 months, I think 3 months. And he's telling, it was very interesting because he was kind of nonchalant because I think he's so traumatized. It was a bit of a challenge, you know. It was kind of funny the way he was talking about it, but he was saying, describing the way into Gaza. You know, it was on they took him on those Toyota pickup trucks, and bringing them into the city, and there were crowds of people celebrating and showing off these V and handing out candy, and that cannot be said about the Germans. That cannot be said about the Nazis. Well, in Kristallnacht, perhaps something very close to that, but not in this scale. Nothing of this scale. So words, I think, are not enough to describe the horrors that went down there, and the horrors that this ideology brought to the world. And unfortunately, the way our government continues to act, it seems that they are going to be staying with us for the near term, unless we finish this war as soon as possible. They seem to survive. And their people are very resilient. They want to keep the fight. They want to go until the end.
Yeah, and just to point to our viewers, vast majority of whom are not in Israel, when your government, like our government in this country, supports the Palestinians, and that's what they are doing, despite, you know, regardless of what they actually say, they are supporting the Palestinians. This is what they're supporting. Even when they just say, you know, innocent civilians, you know, you're harming too many innocent civilians. This is what they're supporting. They're supporting people celebrating in the streets, the mass slaughter, the mass rape, the mass torture of innocent people in their homes, in a music festival. I mean, the music festival is so appropriate a setting for such savagery, because it is people enjoying life, and that is something that that these savages, their culture is just so clearly against. Marco.
Yeah, and that goes exactly to the point. The main essential difference is Hamas and the people in Gaza love death, and we love life, and that's so clear in the way the savage attack on Israel was made. They were reveling in the destruction, and let's not forget, and I'll keep mentioning it. They still holding 100-odd hostages, and they are in Gaza. The people in Gaza know where they are. They could give them up. They could surrender, and their pain would come to an end, wouldn't it? They wouldn't be suffering attacks from the IDF, because the IDF would just occupy and deal with it in different way, less violent way. But no, they choose to go down this route. They choose to keep the hostages and not to return them to Israel where they were taken from. And again, this is their own choice, dictated by their own ideology. Their ideology is destruction. As the guy said, you know, you serve Allah, your God, by killing people.
Yeah, he said to kill for Allah is a way of worship. Now that is not what you will see on a sign in London or in New York, but that is true. And that is what the apologists don't want to acknowledge. In the same way that those celebration videos that you're talking about, the clips of celebration after October the 7th on the streets of Gaza, those are the social media videos that are very quickly suppressed after the event, the same as they were quickly suppressed after 9/11 in terms of the clips that were, what was filmed and recorded at the time. Obviously, it wasn't social media, but what was filmed and recorded at the time that showed that, because that very instantly demonstrates to a Western audience that these people celebrate the violence and they are actually in favor of the violence, and that's what they live for and applaud. So and of course that undercuts the message that they're victims, that they're innocent, that they didn't really want this, that Hamas is somehow different. It's not attached to people. It's a floating evil that's detached from people and from a religious base. That's what they would like you to believe, but that just doesn't stand up. And in the clip that we just showed, one of the great points that he mentions there is the ethnic cleansing, referring to that point where we see endlessly how the reversal of good and evil is flouted in our culture today, when it's the Jewish people are accused of ethnically cleansing Gaza, when this is really the truth that he's laying out there, and he's laying out the basis for it and the ideology behind it as a consistent ideology. And that is all of the information necessary to understand the morality of this conflict.
All right, we're more than halfway through the show, and I don't know how many clips we actually have, but at some point I'm hoping we'll get to the I'll call them, for people who haven't seen this, woke Muslim pro-Palestinian American students. I managed to watch like a minute or less of it, so when we get to it, I will be as surprised as much of our audience. But let's play the next clip. Jonathan.
What can I say? She's a liar. She's just lying. She makes stuff up. That's untrue. There were no massacres of the people in Gaza or whatever in the West Bank. There were nothing. Nothing can come even close to that. Nothing. Show me. Did she mention an example? I don't think she mentioned any specific example. She can make up stories about fantastical massacres that happened in dreams, but that doesn't make it right. That doesn't make it true. There were no massacres. There's nothing to compare. Absolutely not. It's not the same language. It's like you're comparing cave people to civilized, to people who have we have music, we have universities, we have great art, we have freedom of speech, we have property rights, we have all these things that the people of Gaza do not have. There's literally nothing in the civilization, in the way their politics is handled, the way women are oppressed there, the way it's just, there's nothing compared to you can compare that. So there were no massacres. There were nothing of this sort ever that you can compare to what they did on October 7th. There were some. Sorry, yeah.
Did you see the show we did about that Al Jazeera documentary, or the Al Jazeera documentary itself, from a couple of weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago? There was this documentary about October 7th. Did you happen to catch that? So one of the points they're making is, when they talk about the people who died in Israel, is that some of them may have been killed by the IDF. And they make this point in a way that if that is true, as in the IDF may have been the ones firing because terrorists were holding hostages and the IDF may have shot at them. As if that means the IDF is morally culpable for that. So these people would probably accuse Israel of a massacre even in that instance, and certainly at any time when Israel defends itself. So the way these people use words is as weapons, and as weapons not just against the people are arguing with, weapons against reality. That is what words are to those people. That's why when they march on the streets, they chant "Free Gaza," which sounds great. You know, if Gaza was free, you know, laissez-faire capitalist society, that would be wonderful. They don't mean free. They mean, you know, turn the rest of Israel and the West Bank into the Islamic shithole that Gaza is, or at least was until very recently.
I think this goes back to the epistemological point. There is no truth, and I think that's something that they teach in those universities. I think that's where they get this from. They can say whatever. You know, if she gets enough likes on TikTok, that makes it right. That makes it true. There is no truth. There is no objective reality as an arbiter. There is just whatever we come up with. We have Islamic truth. You have Jewish truth. And what can win in such a battle? Only violence, only jihad, only war. That's why it leads to that. There's no way to mediate between these two.
Thank you, Kathleen, for the super chat. The Ayn Rand Center UK is banned from TikTok, but if we get likes on YouTube, we will continue telling the truth. I mean, we'll continue telling it even if we don't get likes, but the likes mean more people will get to hear what we say, as do comments. And if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe. Share. We still have a few minutes to go. We may go a few minutes over. Marco.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a surprise that critical race theory doesn't have anything to do with critical thinking. Thinking and CRT are two separate things, and CRT, unfortunately, is what prevails in university nowadays. Of course, the fact that she talks about several massacres is just enough to throw it out there so people can pick it up. They don't know what massacres there are. They know not even if it's true, but they hear the word. So, you know, somebody said it on telly, so it must be true. I can talk about it. And then the pathetic way she goes about our suffering has not been recognized. Really, you look quite well fed, lady. You don't look exactly like somebody who's struggling. Perhaps all you struggle with concept and clear thinking, but apart from that, this kind of creating victim status from a distance, that's quite frankly pathetic. And ignoring all the facts, talking about massacres when you know all the fact that, yeah, they're calling for ceasefire now, but how many times there was a pause in hostilities, and the ceasefire, the pause, always broken by Gaza or the West Bank? Where are the rockets coming from? Gaza. Where are or Hezbollah in Lebanon, wherever? Where are the killing of Jews? In the checkpoints between interface between Israel and Gaza Strip and West Bank. You know, you cannot just pick and choose what you want to talk about. They are the victims. We are the assailants. No, I mean, the facts are there. Just look at them, and you don't even have to make up your mind, because you just observe the facts and reality will shine out.
How quickly she wants to get through that quick phrase about civilians and innocents, the contractually obliged nod that is as brief as possible before you can obfuscate and attempt to divert in order to reclaim the victimhood mantle for yourself and your people. That's so clear, so common, and so disgusting.
Thank you, Ari, for the super chat. Ari says, kind of continuing on the theme that Marco started, he says, thank you, Allah, for helping those cows and all of Twitter believe that the media are pro-Israel. I have to say, doesn't matter how she looks when she, you know, considering her ideas. If she was good looking, it would not make it better, maybe worse. But anyway, I'm afraid to ask Daniel, do we have any more clips from that? Apparently we do. Yeah, marked as civilian areas. I mean, all of Gaza is a civilian area. All of Hamas are civilians. They're not officially soldiers, you know, and so, yeah, that basically says that Israel has no right to defend itself and has no right to respond and to attempt to prevent Hamas from carrying out its promise to repeat October 7th again and again until Israel is annihilated. I mean, there's something about America. I mean, I love America. I think it's the greatest country on earth. Jonathan doesn't seem to agree, but all right, it's not our first disagreement. You know, and I love that they have the First Amendment, that, you know, the most despicable views it can be expressed without government doing anything about it. But you know, Dr. Phil, you have editorial control. And you know, it's interesting to bring both sides of a debate. We've done debates on this channel on many topics. It's, you know, Jonathan and I have done a debate recently, like like a month or two ago, about Netanyahu. You know, yeah, debates are interesting, but it's not, you know, don't become Piers Morgan where you kind of approve of, you know, just the fact that somebody has a view that's out there means we need to listen to them. These girls are despicable, and I don't know, you know, I kind of trying to find an excuse for them and think maybe they're young, you know, they're in university, but they're not young enough to, you know, they're not like the kids we saw in that video who really have the excuse of being children. They're not children, they're grown-ups, and they should know better, and Dr. Phil should know better than inviting them. Jonathan.
Well, I think he actually did good, because the way Musab responded was brilliant. But what the Israeli politician would reply to what she said would be, oh well, we warn the civilians, we give them, yeah, we're trying everything we can. It's tragic, it's terrible that the civilians are dying. We're trying everything, therefore we're good. No, that's not the way to answer that. All deaths in Gaza are on the hands of those who initiated the war. That is the Palestinian people. All the deaths, anything. So from that perspective, it is the moral right of the Israeli military to kill civilians if that justifies the goal of the war, which is to put an end to Hamas and everything, and, you know, denazify, pacify, whatever you want to call it, Gaza. So that is moral. If IDF had the reason, and you know, if it was an accident also, that's fine. That's the responsibility on Hamas. They should go, those girls, they should go and complain to Hamas. They should go to their offices in Rafah and you know, protest against Hamas to stop the war and release the hostages, because all their brothers and sisters in Gaza are dying by the terrible IDF. That's what they should do. Instead, they deny the Holocaust. They deny October 7th. And they spread these lies. So that's the way they should be answered, in my opinion.
Are women allowed to complain to Hamas? Is that even legal?
They can try, but I doubt that they will be able to return.
Marco.
Yeah, that's an important point. The self-defense that Israel engaged in after being attacked by Hamas on October 7th, every single victim is on Hamas's hand. Every bit of blood spilled is on Hamas's hand. The fact that Israel is using techniques which minimizes the casualties on the ground, they could have just gone in and bombed the whole thing north to south without worrying. That's what they should have done. But they chose to go the altruistic way by putting their own peoples at risks, losing people on the ground, trying to pick out Hamas one by one without minimizing the casualties on the ground. Now, this is immoral in a way, because you're maximizing your losses in order to protect the people of Hamas, the Gaza, and this is totally off. It's even idiotic.
And you know, Marco, the worst thing about it is that the Israelis don't get it. I don't care about the world. The world can go to hell. The Israelis don't get it, and our soldiers are dying because of that. That's the worst thing that we're doing right now, and this delay and everything. That's a crime of the Israeli government. That's a moral stain on Israel. That's what, if Israel does not finish this war within these next months, it doesn't have a right to exist, because it's a country that does not protect its citizens. We failed to do that in October 7th, and we are failing to do that in the war after. So it's a very important point.
Sure. But the point is not just Israel that thinks that. The whole Western world is sold to this morality of altruism, where the next person, that your neighbor, counts more than you do. So you have to make sure you suffer, but you protect them, and that's where we are captured by. That's the kind of morality we're working by. And you're right. If Israel doesn't finish the job, doesn't carry on and get on with getting rid of the last bits in Rafah, Israel will not have the chance to live, because if they stop now, in a few years' time, Hamas will regroup and do it over again. They already promised they're going to do it over again, over and over again. Why don't you listen to them? They tell you what they want to do. They've told you in the past what they wanted to do, and they did it. So why should we take their words, even if they decide, oh, let's go for a ceasefire? They have the hostages still. They could surrender now if they cared about their own population. They do not.
What this woman is saying is human shields is a policy that works. So go for it, Hamas. Have human shields. What she's saying is that Israel will be cowed by their altruism because of those human shields. So it's encouraging them to go for it. She's encouraging them to take more hostages, to abduct more Jews for the same reason, because it'll work, and therefore the Israelis won't be able to attack. And of course, we know the Israelis warn ahead of attacks, the population to evacuate a building, for example. And we also know that Hamas encourage people to stay. And we know that many people do stay for that reason. They do stay despite caring for their families, supposedly. They do stay despite having children. They do stay despite the danger, because they buy into the ideology, which is the same ideology that Hamas is propagating. So when people say, oh, yes, but it's their families, they only care for their families, they choose to put their families at risk on many occasions because of the ideology, in the same way that Hamas chooses to attack from that same base.
Sometimes I love how our trolls, I can't help myself. One of the trolls says, all these four are on Zionist payroll. Clearly you haven't listened to a word we're saying, because we're actually, if Israel did what we're suggesting, the war would have been over on October 8th or 9th. But look, if Israel decides to change course and agrees with us, the head of Zionist payroll, give us a call. We'll definitely accept any funds. And anybody who likes what we do can obviously support us with a super chat, or by becoming a member, a YouTube member, or a member through the website. That includes you, person who thinks we're on the Zionist payroll. Anyway, Daniel is telling me we have 2 more clips, so we should continue. Very well said. Thank you, Roland, for the super chat. He says, today's installment of your Zionist payroll. And you noticed at some point while he was putting her in her place, she says, I condemn the question. So she struggles with the idea of mass rape, mass torture, burning people alive, killing people in their homes, killing children, taking children hostage, and live streaming other children abusing a child. All of that, she has a problem. She condemns the question. Jonathan.
In 1,000 years couldn't have said it better than he. I thought the response on their face was just brilliant. I thought it was terrific. And the shock on their face is really spectacular, and it really reveals because I think she has a dissonance, because she's taught that because he's Palestinian, he should have the Palestinian voice, but yet he looks like a Palestinian, the whole critical race theory bullshit, and yet he speaks to her like a Zionist. He speaks like a Jew. How is it possible? So I think you could see that kind of confusion in her eyes. So I thought it was particularly a very good clip, and we need to see more of this gentleman.
Yeah. Well, the fact that these people in the West, these young students who don't know up from down, assume that every Palestinian is a victim, comes also from the UN and the Western narrative that every Palestinian is a refugee. They've been refugees for nearly 80 years now. So even if you know somebody who was a refugee from somewhere at some point, makes you a Palestinian refugee. And they keep using this as they, keep the wound open, just to remind the world we are victims and Israel is evil. This is just preposterous. But when you challenge them, they don't have an answer, because there isn't an answer. It's all made up.
What a hero this guy is, and how he punctures every divorce from reality talking point of both her, of every Western newsroom, all the mainstream ones, all of the politicians you're hearing in all of those people on protest. He punches every single one because of his personal experience, as from their viewpoint, because of his Hamas father, because of his upbringing, because of everything that would claim he would be a valid speaker, is then applying to the opposite argument to what the one they're making and the one that is being most heard. So yeah, he's an absolute hero, and he really should be commended for it. And as you said at the start, and Dr. Phil for having him on and making this clear and bringing an audience to clap such a clear point is the clearest morality being clapped that you could ever see.
Yeah. Thank you, Hannah, for the super chat. Hannah said, Zionist cash for humanity. I love how it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Bibi, if you want to send a super chat, I know you're watching, you're welcome to as well. Also, if you want a spokesperson, Jonathan is available. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. All those who support Hamas are evil. I absolutely agree. We are way over time. Jonathan, where can people find more of your work?
They can find me on my Substack, link in the description, philosophyIneeded.com, link in the description.
Marco, Richard?
Yeah, you can find us, but you can find lots of little videos that we distill from various discussions on this channel. That makes the point really clear. You can share and embed in your social media feed, and they're very clear on very different issues. So go to the Briefly Objective channel and feast your eyes and learn lots of new stuff.
Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Bonnie says, more Zionist payroll. Thank you. I'm Razi Ginzberg on Twitter. And yes, supporting our work helps make the world a better place, and hopefully will help make defeating the Palestinians a possibility at some point sooner rather than later. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll be back with the Daily Objective and the reality show tomorrow.